The latest college football playoff, CFP, ranking decisions have left many scratching their heads, and it's clear that the system is far from perfect. Michigan's athletic director, Ward Manuel, and the rest of the selection committee have made it abundantly clear that they will not adjust the rankings for teams not playing during championship week. Manuel said, "Those who are not playing, we will not adjust those teams. They don't have another data point." But here's the issue. That's not obvious at all. Take the SEC championship game, where Georgia is set to play Texas. If Georgia wins, Ole Miss, currently at number 13 in the rankings, will have a legitimate claim for a playoff spot. Why? Because Ole Miss already has an 18-point win over the SEC champion, Texas. Add a victory over number 2, and a dominant 24-point win at number 14 South Carolina. They also have 3 losses, 2 of which came down to heart-stopping, fourth-down prayers from Kentucky and LSU. Yet, according to the committee, that doesn't count as a data point, because Ole Miss is not playing in the championship game. This is where the CFP system fails. It's more about who's playing when rather than evaluating the entire body of work from all teams. Now, let's talk about Indiana. How is this team in the playoff conversation? The Hoosiers have no wins against teams in the selection committee's top 25, and their sole loss, a 23-point blowout at Ohio State, is far from impressive. Yet, somehow, Indiana is in the tournament, ahead of teams with much stronger resumes. This raises a fundamental question. Are we rewarding teams based on their records, or are we simply rewarding teams with fewer losses, regardless of the competition? The system seems to favor those with the easier path, teams that rack up wins against weaker opponents and avoid tough losses. Is that really what we want to promote? Do teams from easier conferences, or with easier schedules, deserve a playoff spot over teams that have played against elite competition? This issue needs to be addressed, raising serious concerns about the fairness and integrity of the playoff process. Take the Army, for example. The Black Knights have been dominating opponents, winning by an average of 17 points per game. Their only loss? A blowout to number 4 Notre Dame. Army plays in the American Athletic Conference might not carry the same weight as the Big Ten or SEC, but their performance has been more than impressive. Yet, they're not in the playoff discussion. Instead, with a more manageable schedule and weaker competition, Indiana is poised for a spot. This system is rewarding mediocrity, and that's a serious problem. What message is that supposed to be? If you're the M like Army, which has proven itself against tough teams and still hasn't been given a fair shot, or a team like Ole Miss, which has played a brutal schedule and earned. If you win, the system tells you that your accomplishments don't matter as much as your conference affiliation or win-loss record. This, to me, is a travesty. Instead of rewarding teams like Indiana for winning games against overmatched opponents, we should be rewarding teams like Ole Miss and Army for playing and winning against the best. If the selection committee can't set it, we have much bigger issues with the system than we ever thought. The 12-team playoff was supposed to bring more fairness and inclusivity to college. Still, all it's doing is reinforcing the old biases and rewarding teams that haven't proven themselves against top-tier competition. Indiana might be a nice story, but their inclusion in this race only highlights how broken the system is. It's the same story as 2020, when Indiana was left out of the Big Ten championship game so Ohio State could get in. Ohio State went on to play for the national title. At the same time, Indiana lost to a 5-5 Ole Miss team in the Outback. Now, the committee is repeating the same mistake, putting a team in the playoffs that doesn't deserve it based on a schedule full of underwhelming competition. We can't keep rewarding teams that are simply avoiding losses. Instead, we are rewarding those who go out and face the toughest competition. If the 12-team playoff becomes nothing more than a reward for the easiest path, then what was the point of expanding in the first place? We must demand better from the committee and ensure that the best teams, not just the least flawed ones, make it to the playoffs. Different from is not what the 12-team playoff should be. We have to hold the committee accountable because right now, it's just not working.